I'm excited this afternoon for our presentation on resilient marriages. My background is in marriage and family therapy. I'm Jim Berg. I am the psychology member of the board for OCAMPR. With us today we have Susan Hansen, who will be presenting on the resilient marriage and overview. She is a wife and mother of 3 and grandmother of 3. She was raised in a military household. She's an Orthodox Christian counselor who has been licensed for 27 years, in private practice for 20. She specializes in the treatment of couples and families, has been trained extensively in the Gottman method of couple therapy, including with doctors John and Julie Gottman. She works toward a goal of helping couples build godly homes and families. Her additional experience and training includes mental health and recovery for medical professionals, divorce recovery, career fulfillment, professional advocacy, and addictions. She often consults with clinicians on difficult cases. Under the supervision of her priest, she teaches an adult Sunday school class called Contemporary Issues in Orthodoxy, and she attends the Orthodox Church of St. Stephen, Protomartyr in Longwood, Florida. She was chrismated 19 years ago in an Antiochian Orthodox church. Susan.
Thank you. Okay, yes, the resilient marriage. So first of all, you learned a little bit about me, and I just took this opportunity to show you the grandchildren. So in defining resilience, several definitions. Resilience is the ability to recover readily from illness, depression, adversity, or the like. Buoyancy, push the beach ball under the water and it flies back up again. Also, the power or ability to return to the original form, position, and etc. after being bent, compressed, or stretched. Elasticity. Has anybody heard the term Semper Gumby? Mm-hmm. Okay, so, all right, in the Marines, they say Semper Fidelis, Semper Fi, always faithful. Well, the enlisted people say Semper Gumby, always flexible. Okay, so resilience in the military. I do have a daughter in the Navy Reserves. But in marriage, this is my definition, maintaining connectedness. And by that I mean connected is united, joined, or linked. So maintaining that connectedness or returning to it despite the challenges and adversities of life. And as we heard in the plenary yesterday morning, resilience can be learned, and it certainly can be learned in couples. So we're familiar with the wedding at Cana, very traditional icon, and here's a modern wedding, actually my daughter's wedding. Big fat Greek wedding in Tallahassee. So we know what weddings look like in the Orthodox Church. But in marriage is a part of our theosis, if marriage is what you are called to. And it's because of the sandpaper effect, okay? In marriage, in parenting, any situation that you're in where you're close with other people, certainly this would happen in monasticism as well, you learn things about yourself that you probably would not have found out about otherwise. It's pretty easy to be virtuous and not offend anybody if you're all by yourself. But when you live close to people, you do things that annoy each other, and then you find out about all kinds of things about yourself. So why is that? Well, first of all, when we come into marriage, we have a level of trust and expectation. And people criticize this romantic notion of marriage, but in Orthodoxy, we are taught about love and trust and things like that, and hopefully we have learned something about picking somebody to make a life with. Not always, but oftentimes. But our woundedness and our sensitivities are easily triggered. We have a certain way we want to do things. We expect everybody should do them that way, and we find out that's not the case. The passions come into play, and addictions of any kind become known or magnified in a marital situation. So it could be the chemical addictions, it could be what we call process addictions, gambling, eating disorders, spending, all the things, the compulsive things that someone might do, too much time in media, And it's hard to hide these things from our spouse. So I'm going to be talking about the resilient marriage, but along the way, I'm going to be talking about the non-resilient ones that need to be taught how to become resilient. I'm also going to be talking about some special information for clergy, for medical professionals, mental health professionals. But in working with couples, we must deal with emotion. Okay, some of the older theories of couple therapy, let's just calm down this emotion, just don't fight, don't argue, fight fair, different concepts like that. But Gottman and Levinson's longitudinal research shows that the nature of emotional interaction predicts what will happen in a relationship. Okay, and people who stuff emotions, they're going to come out somewhere else. I'm just not going to deal with this right now. I'm going to stuff it inside. And then what happens is, sometime when they're vulnerable, something triggers, and then there's a bigger explosion than there would have been had they dealt with the emotion at the time. So in couple therapy, and you heard I'm a practitioner of Gottman method couple therapy. I'm a purist. I've been to 10 Gottman trainings, including 3 with John and Julie Gottman. And in their research, they learned, first of all, couples need to downregulate the negative affect and its escalation during conflict. And what that means, dial it down, learn how to calm themselves down, learn coping strategies for those heavy emotions in conflict. Oddly enough, they need to increase their positive emotions in conflict. Doesn't that sound weird? A couple are in conflict. Well, they have to learn how to talk to each other, and I'll be going over some more of this. In John Gottman's 40 years of research, he studied couples so extensively, he was able to put them into 2 groups, the masters of relationships and the disasters of relationships. Well, then he marries Julie along the way. John's the researcher, Julie was the clinician, and she says, well, what are you going to do with all this information? John says, I don't know, I'm just going to keep studying unhappy couples. And she said, well, you can't do that. You have to make a therapy based on this information to teach the disasters of relationships how to become masters of relationships. And this is part of what we do work on with couples. We also need to help couples increase their positive affect outside the conflict. So resilient couples are willing to calm themselves down. I'm not saying they're perfect, but they calm themselves down in arguments. They are not so insulting in arguments, and they have a generally more positive environment outside of a conflict. So this is the Sound Relationship House. This is a summary of the Gottman's research over all these years. And, in social sciences, they want you to make a picture, a model. So think of this as floors of the house, and you build from the ground floor up. And the first 3 have to do with building the couple's friendship. And everything in the couple's relationship comes from their friendship. Everything, their sexual relationship, the whole thing. If they're not friends, things don't go well. So the first level, they're building love maps. And this is where they're maintaining an awareness of each other's world. Okay, they go out the door wherever they go to work, or somebody stays home with the kids or whatever. But in a healthy marriage, they understand what's going on in each other's world. They spend time sharing that. Moving up, they share fondness and admiration. They tell each other what they appreciate and what they like. And this is how they make what we call deposits in the emotional bank account. Okay, you have to put in positive things into the relationship, especially for those times when there's going to be a disagreement about something. So there has to be positive in that account. Moving up, they turn toward instead of away. Okay, we put out bids for connection all the time with people. Okay, so with our partners, we might say, did you see that thing on TV the other day? Wasn't that weird? And, I'm looking for connection with my husband, just a little meeting of the minds. Or it can be a big thing like, hey, let's go on a cruise. And then the spouse has a choice of turning toward, away, or against. So turning toward would be, yeah, I did, that was weird, some sort of agreeable comment. Turning away is, yeah, whatever. Turning against is, why the hell are you always talking to me about that stuff? A very hostile comment. Okay. So resilient couples put out bids for connection. Those bids are responded to well. And by the way, if perhaps somebody didn't quite hear it, or the spouse is in a cranky mood or whatever, even if they sort of turn away, the spouse putting the bid out there does not take offense at it, or rarely does. Okay? So there's a lot of leeway there. And moving up in the sound relationship house and becomes the positive perspective. When these other things are going well, the friendship is strong, and the couple has a positive perspective, not only on the relationship, but on life. Okay? So I'm going to be giving you some examples of all these things shortly. So the disaster couples have a negative perspective. So it's about what's in your glass. Is it half full or is it half empty? The positive perspective couples, the masters of relationships, they're willing to let go of those ways in their spouse is not perfect. The ones on the negative side, and with the negative perspective, they're always looking for the flaw in their partner, some way their partner messed up. And you can see that is not a happy way to live. Then we get to the issue of managing conflict. And I'm going to be talking more about conflict, but there's a whole lot of issues that couples have that are unsolvable. And so we don't say solve conflict, we say manage. And some of the early theories of couple counseling included the notion you have to solve their conflicts. So the therapist became the problem solver, or the suggester of different options. That's not what we do in Gottman method couple therapy. So we help our couples accept influence from each other. Rather than being stubborn, my way or the highway, they have to accept influence. They have to learn to compromise. They have to talk about problems without getting all angry and overwrought. And they have to practice self-soothing, which means learn to calm themselves down, have a way to calm themselves when things are not going their way. And again, we're building the stories of the house. They're making life dreams come true, finding ways to support each other's life goals. Somebody wants to go back to school. Somebody wants, a new house. Somebody wants to travel. Somebody wants to pile all the kids on a sailboat and spend a year traveling. They look for ways to make these things come true. And then creating shared meaning. So over time, the couples have the bond. They have a theory, usually unspoken, of what they're about. They're raising their children, their grandchildren. They're involved with their ministries, their missions, whatever they're doing. And so that builds a shared sense of purpose. And then you can see trust and commitment are the pillars that hold up the house. And the way the masters of relationships are building trust and commitment is they're making trustworthiness a priority in their relationship. Okay, so for example, my husband and I share our locations on our phones. Not that I don't trust him or he doesn't trust me, but he can look at that and see, I text him when I'm on my way home, he can tell where I am, and lots of times he's standing on the front porch waiting for me because he sees I came around the corner. And the Gottmans have a saying, small things often, okay? There's not one big thing that repairs all this. It's got to be all these small things often. It's a great motto for a couple. And one thing that's really critical as far as trust and commitment and avoids affairs is not making negative comparisons of their partner, okay? That's a whole nother presentation, affairs and repairs of affairs. But affairs start when people are making negative comparisons of their partner to others, and they're idealizing someone really they barely know. It's easy to think negatively about someone you know well because you know their flaws. So my husband is a lyricist. Raise your hand, honey. He writes a lot of songs, and we've got at least one or two in production right now. But this is the chorus and the bridge to one song he wrote called "Too Good for Givers," and you can tell he's been around me and the Gottman method. We're too good for givers. That's me and you. Too good put up withers. That has always been true. Not blamers or resenters. We've never been retaliators. We're climbers of the wall between us, and when we reach the top of it, we always kiss and make up. We're too good for givers. If you're making up a list, the things you want in a spouse, if you want a home and not just a house, at the top of the list, without a doubt, should be a good forgiver. Okay? And I am going to pass this around so everyone can have a copy of the 4-part apology. You know, we're Orthodox. This should be logical to us. But the thing is, we need to make this a priority and a value in our home, between the couple as well as teaching this to their children. And so the idea, you know, we start with little kids, you know, say sorry, and they go, sorry. And eventually, you know, when they can talk better and understand a few other concepts, they need to learn this. Because I'm sorry is what I call cheap grace. You know, it's on the run. I said I was sorry. But this is just, put this on your refrigerator. The 4 steps. You say I'm sorry, and then you name what you did. You know, that I was late again, and I will, and what you're going to do about it, I'm going to set the alarm on my phone. Will you forgive me? Right? Simple? Okay. Like I said, I think most people in this room know the process, but to put it on your refrigerator and make it a standard, I recommend. Yes?
How often you should do that per day?
70 times 7. And this is not particularly a Gottman thing, although this goes right into the Gottman method, but this is a simpler one that I start with when people are earlier in the process. There is a very specific exercise to take people through, to take couples through when there's been a major breach such as infidelity, but you cannot do that in the beginning. You have to work on some of those early levels of the sound relationship house before you can take a couple through this very heavy other repentance and apology process. So I said that there are all these things that couples disagree on, and I call it that pesky 69%, okay? These are issues that the couple will never resolve. And this is from Dr. Gottman's research, Mr. Gottman. He found what they did was they would give these questionnaires to couples, you know, basically finding out what their disagreements were. Every few years they'd give it again and again and again, and it was always the same thing. Okay? And there's a really cute video of John Gottman where he's you can see a lot of his stuff on YouTube. And he says, you know, people ask me all the time, what is the number one thing couples argue about? What do they argue about? And he goes, and you know what? Not a damn thing. Whatever their arguments are nothing, as a rule. You know, you squeeze the tube of toothpaste wrong. You left a cup out instead of putting it in the dishwasher, whatever. But this 69%, these are gridlocked issues. They will have the same argument over and over. And these come from certain sources. One is what culture we're from. Okay, so you take a OCA type person, and they marry a Protestant, and the Protestant can't figure out why you're going to Pascha services on Saturday night, and then you're up all night. And the Protestant person wants to get up at go to 5 a.m. Sunrise service on Easter. So, you know, culture makes a big difference. Our families have ways they do things that are going to be different. We have temperaments. Some people are laid back, Some are anxious, some are intense, some are not. And then our history, different wounds that we've had. If we've been cheated on in the past in a relationship, we can be very jealous or possessive or controlling. The history of the couple's relationship. I have one couple that the issue is his pornography problem, which he has cleaned up completely, but his wife just can't get over this. This went on secretly. This is a secret addiction, and he got found out, and she was totally unaware of it. And now she wants to tell him, okay, you have to go work out. How come you did this at work and you didn't do that? He works at home a lot. So, now we have to help her, back to that trust and commitment thing. And he's got to do a lot of work to build that as well. So, again, the resilient couples have ways of addressing the 69%. That's 2/3 of what they disagree on. They have to learn to talk about, accept influence from each other, compromise, calm themselves down, don't get overheated in arguments, or calm themselves down if they do. And the masters of relationship, the resilient couples, know how to repair, how to come back and say, I'm sorry, or how to say, okay, I'm getting overwhelmed in this argument. I need to calm down. Let's talk about it tomorrow or in half an hour or whatever it is. But they know how to say those words to put things back on track. And again, the bids for connection. The resilient couples respond well to their partner's bids for connection. So there are some problem communication styles, and there are certain things to do instead. How many people have heard of the 4 Horsemen? Okay, how many people have taken Journey of Marriage? Dr. Mamalakis and Dr. Joannides course that's taught in the Greek Orthodox diocese. He talks about the 4 Horsemen in there. My daughter, the one you saw the wedding picture of, she said, yeah, Mom, he knows, Father Rob, he does the Gottman thing, it's all in that book, that he went over with us. So every time I hear about something to do with marriage and orthodoxy, I buy it. I have so many things from St. John Chrysostom to this Journey of Marriage and so forth. But again, the problem communication styles that come up is that same argument over and over. Now, I want to say something. How many people in here are clinicians, counselor types? How many people are clergy? Okay. What I want to say is you really need to look at this article. When we're finished, I will hand you the copy of these, the PowerPoint slides. But get this article. It is a good summary of the book that Jacobson and Gottman wrote. You don't have to read the whole book. But it's called Anatomy of a Violent Relationship. Excuse me. And it just lays it out, what these violent people do and how to know when you're working with one of those. And I've had a couple therapists who've contacted me to discuss difficult cases. And these 2 I'm thinking of, one of them says, well, I don't know, he wants to get back with her, but he chased her in his car through the parking garage, where they live, and, I'm going to sit down with them and negotiate when they should share the kids, and I'm going, whoa, 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 whoa. You are dealing with an extremely violent individual. You should have nothing to do with this relationship. It will never, it will not go well for you or them. And once she read the article, she referred them to domestic violence shelter for her and so forth. Some Gottman trainers that I have worked with, it's a married couple, and so what they do when they encounter one of these, they split the couple up. The husband goes with the husband therapist, and the wife goes with the other therapist, And so then the wife therapist starts working with the wife on domestic violence, making a plan, a safety plan, and so forth. And then the husband therapist, he works with the husband, just kind of saying, well, you know, processing and sort of a Rogerian kind of thing. And, you know, one day it's like, hey, man, she left me. Well, gee, that's too bad. So they handle it very, very carefully because it's an extremely volatile situation. And not only is it dangerous for the therapist, of course, but it's dangerous, you know, for the spouse at risk. So please, if you work with people, read that article. It's a quick way to learn that. So this is the graphic for the 4 horsemen. And again, we're talking about, yes?
Just before you move on, I think it's helpful to hear you speak that because I know, at least in certain church traditions.
Wait, can you wait for the mic? Oh, you'll have to come up here, I think.
I was just going to take a pause and thank you for mentioning that because I know for some of us in certain church traditions, even the faith itself, the theology, the spirituality can be used to sort of instruct and guide either spouse, the wife or the husband, you know, that it is, you know, unchristian or ungodly to, you know, call the police or to refer them to a sort of outside or secular place that that won't be able to take care of them. And so what happens is the wound becomes deeper and larger, and then difficult to mend. So I think that's very wise counsel. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Okay, any other comments? Okay. This is about the 4 horsemen. Just going briefly over this. In the left column, you see criticism, defensiveness, contempt, and stonewalling. And these are the negative patterns, and they actually develop in this pattern. Somebody says something critical, the other one responds, what do you mean I'm always late? You were late yesterday. In fact, you didn't even take out the garbage. You know, and then we're on a different topic. So they get defensive, and then the next thing is ups another level to contempt, which is sarcasm, all kinds of things, which I'll go into more detail. And then it gets so heated that stonewalling, you know, the body's physically present, not listening. The other one's talking. Nothing's happening except people are getting more angry. So that is that 4-step sequence. So just to go over this briefly, criticism is telling somebody what's wrong with them. Okay? I don't know why we think we can beat somebody up verbally enough till they figure out what we want. We just need to ask. I would really appreciate it if blah, blah, blah. So the idea, too, is to use a gentle startup. And this, remember when I said in conflict, the resilient couples have less negative emotion. They might be in conflict, but a resilient couple hopefully will say, or if they don't say it this way, they have to do a repair later. They'll say, I am feeling really upset, you know, because I see these dishes out on the counter after I just did all the dishes, and I would really appreciate it if you would clean up your dishes, you know, when you finish your snack. Okay, you say it nicely, you say it gently, a gentle startup. Instead of, I can't believe you did that again, you know, that kind of negativity only escalates. When defensiveness, as I said, is a way to try to ward off an attack. Somebody is telling us something we don't want to hear, and so the antidote to that is take some responsibility. Yes, you're right, I was late. I was late, I'm really sorry, and then I'm going to set the alarm on my phone, and hopefully that won't happen again. Now, contempt is the worst. Contempt is the most corrosive. Contempt is when I am coming at my spouse with a position of superiority and telling this person, you know, I'm not only criticizing, but putting them down, okay? And it also includes sarcasm, eye-rolling, you know, huffing and puffing, things like that. Well, the antidote for that is to overall build a culture of appreciation, you know, have this lots of deposits to the emotional bank account where we really wouldn't think of being contemptuous of our partner. Stonewalling is when someone gets so overwrought emotionally they can't really process anything. They've got all the fight or flight syndromes running around, hormones running around. And when you get two of these, it's very interesting. I use pulse oximeters in my office, those little oxygen things, and it has an alarm, and I have it set at 95, and when their heart rate goes over 95, it goes beep, 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 beep. And that's when we know we have to do some self-soothing, and many people need to learn that. But in John Gottman's research, these are the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, when we observe a couple having a conflict discussion, we can tell in the first few minutes if they're at risk of splitting up by, are we hearing these things? Okay, these are especially the worst. So resilient couples, if they do this, they repair, they stop themselves pretty quickly before there's too much damage done. So for clergy, okay, how to identify troubled relationships? Well, if you hear it in confession and counseling in confession, then yes, you know it's a troubled relationship. But by observation, you can look at how they speak to each other. Is there sadness there, anxiety that you're not really seeing another reason for? Outright hostility toward the spouse. I'm thinking of people who may sit far apart from each other at church. Never see them really together. They just kind of go their separate ways. Not able to connect with God. There could be a marital issue at the bottom of that. Just an overall lack of joy. And excessive self-depreciation, deprecation, and taking too much responsibility for the marriage, which is the classic codependency. You know, if I were just more of something, then my spouse would be nicer to me. You know, we wouldn't argue and so forth. And so they feel over-responsible when it's about two people. Also, you can observe their children. Of course, children will tell you all kinds of things, especially the younger ones. And children's behavior and play, because they will often play out the arguments that their parents are having. And then others may come to clergy and say, listen, this couple over here is in trouble. And so some of the solutions, of course, if they ask for pastoral counseling, great, that's a good start. Some sort of counsel that you give them in confession, some homilies that pick up on some bits and pieces of what they need to hear, if they'll hear it. Workshops or seminars on marriage. It can be educational, which means, you know, somebody standing up in the front and saying couples should do this and couples should do that. Or experiential, where you talk a bit and then they break up into, you know, couple groups and you've given them an exercise to do and they do that with each other. I really like this one of increasing and enhancing parish social activities. Just spread the love. Monthly socials, which we have at our church. There's a group of parents at our church that all had young children. They all got together just sort of spontaneously. You know, it's like a couple families, and then they found another family and brought them in, and they just kept collecting families until they had to break it into 2 groups because of having a big enough house, not only for the parents but all the kids running around. And they really ministered to each other, and some of them, at least one couple, got referred to me in the process because of, you know, as everybody got to know each other better, they disclosed what was going on and started getting some more help.
Were these social? Was it sort of just a social gathering, or like meeting? And was there a structure?
The
to
parents
it?
of young children.
Yeah.
They started out as, you know, a covered dish, I think, on, you know, Sunday night, once or twice a month, and then they did some sort of programming. I mean, I was never there. I just heard about it from another therapist in our church who has young children. So they did have some programming. I don't know if they still meet or not. You know, some of them moved, and then school and all these other activities come to bear. But I'm sure. But the friendships that were established are very strong. It's great, and friendships among their children also. Men's groups. My husband started a beer drinking group.
So,
It's a.
we drink good beer, so we don't drink a whole lot of it. You know?
Right.
We go to a really good craft beer pub, and you know, and it's called the St. Arnold of Metz Society. I
Can we get the
encourage you to all
microphone?
start one in your parish. Normally, it started off as being a men's group, but women can keep men out of their groups, but men can't keep women out of theirs. You understand what I'm saying? So we have women that come to it also. But it's just a good time. And usually you go to these beer pubs, and there's different tables with all the same number of people from the same age group. But we've got people from all age groups, from people in their 70s all the way down into their 20s. And so it's a really interesting mix, and we always say a prayer. And if there's a clergy there, they bless the food and drink and all of that stuff. And then we sit down and we have a good glass of beer, and they even serve wine there if you want that. But it's a good time. And people look forward to it. It's St. Arnold of Metz. He's the patron saint of brewmeisters and breweries.
Okay, and also now that has been, at least for several meetings, I want him to answer this too. For several meetings, though, Father turned it into a true men's group and meeting at the church, and you'll have to say
Yeah,
what they do.
we're doing the Lionhearted program, and that's really good. It's really good. And so we bring craft beer in and watch the video and talk about it while we're drinking beer.
Yes, all things in moderation.
That's right.
But that's brought in different.
Yeah, and because we share a common cup, we don't mind passing each other's glasses around because we've already shared the germs.
they sample each other's beers and stuff. But anyway, that's about the love of the parish. No.
One, maybe two, but they're good beers. It's like, I usually only drink one because I drink Imperial Stouts. Imperial Stouts have a high alcohol content and a high hops content. And hops is a muscle relaxant, I will tell you that. I'm a
Okay.
massage therapist, and and I prescribe beer to all my patients.
Okay, so the point is that it's about sharing the love, and we have brought people in, and actually it gets to be kind of pan-Orthodox too, because there's some deacons from the Greek church have been there, and I think the Romanian church, and so it's.
One more thing is, in this pub that we usually go to, we brought in a consecrated icon of St. Arnold of Metz, and it's sitting right above one of the coolers in this place.
Yes. Okay. So there's a little. If anybody ever asks why it's there, I think the people at the place have some explanation for it. So for clergy, when to refer? First of all, a simple metric: how much of your time are they taking? Now that is not a cold-hearted consideration, but it is one way to think about it. I used to teach at the Institute for Professional Youth Ministry, which was part of the Episcopal Church in the Orlando area. And I taught all the risk management stuff. But this is one way to look at it. If you have a couple who is intensely taking a lot of your time, you probably need to refer them out. They're complicated, and you have a whole bunch of other people to take care of. And then we want to think about, what is the risk to the couple? Are they getting ready to split up? Is there... what is going on there? Is there mental health? Is there substance abuse? Whatever. What is the risk to their children? Large, loud fights. What's going on there? Now, I've had clergy tell me, well, if they'd only do what so-and-so says, Christ, St. John, this priest, this book, this seminar, whatever. If they'd only do this, they'd be fine. But Dr. Mamalakis, we were talking yesterday, and he said what he tells his seminary students, look, basketball, it's just put the ball in the hoop. Okay? That's like, just do what Christ says. Basketball, put the ball in the hoop. Well, we know there's way more to basketball, becoming a good basketball player, than just telling somebody to put the ball in the hoop. There's training, there's coaching, do it this way, try this, tweak that, there's all of that. So similar with marriage and helping couples become resilient. So medical practitioners. Do we have any medical people in here? Okay, great. I will pass this around for anybody who's interested. This is an article I wrote several years ago. It was published in this Medical News, which went to, it goes out to primary care. It's about substance abuse, but Medically, if you're getting vague complaints, getting stress-related disorders, headaches, digestive, lethargy, sleep disturbance, that doesn't seem to be getting any better, there could be something going on at home. Also, substance abuse. If you're finding substance abuse in your clients, in your patients, it's affecting their marriage and their family. At least 10% of your patients are substance abusers, whether you realize it or not, and I suggest more than that is 10% of the general population. So if people have various complaints, physical complaints, they're going to be in the doctor's office more frequently. And so also for the medical practitioners, refer them to mental health services when they bring you issues that are beyond the scope of your specialty. I mean, you're not responsible to fix everything, but especially primary care, people want to sit and talk to you about what's going on oftentimes. Also your function. Okay, maybe you are mental health trained, but that's not your job in the clinic where you work, or your schedule. So there are always practitioners who can help support you in getting these people what they need. Now, the emergency department, my daughter works in one of those. Of course, we know, do we have any emergency people here? Domestic violence, that's one thing they're trained to look out for. And they usually have printouts that automatically come out on their documents that they get sent home with. It includes all kinds of resources. But you can watch how a couple behaves with each other, watch the addiction pattern, the classic codependent couple where one's the user, the other's the enabler. You can refer the codependent person to Al-Anon, Nar-Anon, Gamma-Anon, all those family groups. They need to have a list of resources, and sometimes your smaller hospitals don't really have a good list of resources. It's something my daughter runs into. There's one good addiction doctor in a wide area, so she's got to refer everybody to that person, which is fine if they can get in there. But then just telling them the old-fashioned truth, which is what my daughter often does, is just tell them the way it is. You're helping your daughter keep using drugs, and this is what you have to do to stop, and it doesn't matter if she cries. She actually had a patient recently who came in, an older woman, drug-seeking, and when she walks, she could hear this woman saying, "And I don't want that Dr. Hinchelwood." This is in South Carolina, but that is my daughter, so she was the doctor. And so my daughter comes in the room, and the woman's kind of muttering, and she says, "I'm going to kill myself. I am going to kill myself." And my daughter says, "Well, why? What's going on?" She says, "I'm going to kill myself because you're my doctor, and you won't give me what I want." And that's the first time she's ever, that's the first time she's ever had anybody tell her that. So mental health practitioners, couples come into counseling, obvious. Be careful of a married couple, a married individual who's complaining about depression, anxiety, and sleep disturbances, obviously complaining about their spouse. But even if couples are not your thing, you need to be aware of a person in a relationship so that you are not counseling them, "Oh, go for it, go, be all you can be," or whatever, when they want to go off and do something that will cause problems in the marriage. So to help couples become resilient couples, the therapy needs to be dyadic, not didactic. Didactic is teaching them. It's when the therapist tells them you should do this and you should do that. But dyadic is when you give them something to do in the session and they are talking about it. And, as a therapist, I'm coaching them through it. So this is a list of the different things that kind of therapy needs to include, which you can pick up on your handout. But I'll tell you, one case of infidelity issues, they worked on the other side of the world. The husband had a job, and they were over there, and it was just a really weird environment. And it's not military, and corporations don't always know how to take care of their people as well as the military does. And so each of them doing their own thing, they're starting to get flirtatious and so forth. So I did an intensive. They were with me about 2.5 days straight. I did 2 days and then gave them a few days to work on the things they had learned and then had them come back. And, it it was amazing. They walked in the door, they were so angry. And, they have a young child, and she's afraid, what's going to happen to me if we split up? Is my child going to have to go visit dad on the other side of the world, or is he going to take the kid to another country and I'll never see him again? And, he's got similar thoughts. Am I going to lose my kid? I'll never see my family again. And all this is going through their minds, and they're building up and building up. But we worked through this, and we went to those emotional places. And I want to say in good couple therapy, you have to go with them emotionally, but you can't leave them there. You have to know what to do to move them. Because emotion by itself, just expressing emotion, is a disaster. I've had many couples that have said they've been to couple counseling before, and they're very leery of trying it again. Last time we went, we fought for 3 days and didn't speak. Well, we can't leave couples there. This lady, her thing was they loved to party, and they were, alcohol and all that was going on, and she would just say the worst things, and he went out and had an affair. And, of course, now she's even madder at him. And we talked about, they weren't willing to give up their social life. They weren't willing to change people, places, and things, which you need to do when there's a substance abuse problem. And she was very adamant. Everything was fine, and she should be able to drink as much as she wanted. So eventually we went through this whole reconciliation exercise. And he said what he was going to do is going to keep more in touch with her, be more open with her, and he would never see this other woman again, and, all these things. And when it came to her side of it, she said, I'm going to control my drinking. And I was really surprised, because before that, she wasn't willing to do that. But they were working out their thing. It wasn't the pattern I would have chosen for them, but they chose it for them. And let's see. Oh, this one. A medical professional, the man goes to his physician and says, I'm angry all the time, and I guess I need some medication. It's interfering at home and with my wife and my kids. And the physician says, there's no medication for this. You need counseling. So he comes in to see me, and I'm listening to him. And as a couple counselor, I'm looking, when I have a married person coming in, I'm looking, well, does this need to be done in the course of couple counseling, which I suggested in his case. And they did come in as a couple and started working out their issues, and I had him go to an online anger management class, and turns out she was one of these people that she felt like a failure. There's something wrong with her if she could not keep him from going into these dark moods and so forth. So, we worked on that whole system, but they've done really well. So I could, there's a lot more I could say, but I don't know if we have time for one or two questions. And wherever the microphone is, we need to keep it there.
I think due to the technical issues we had at the beginning, I'm going to take the moderator's privilege to have us go over a little bit. So maybe we can take one or two quick questions.
How do you handle it when you are working with an individual and you realize that it's a couple's issue and they say, my partner won't come in? Are there ways that you try to get the partner to come in, or are there ways to work with that individual on making improvements in the relationship?
You can only do so much one-sided, and I will do that if there's absolutely no way. But I don't know, so often the partner will come in because they want to tell on that one. They want to tell their story, and they want to tell them what's wrong with that one. And I think sometimes those partners are surprised to be invited into the process. So,
one other thing I've run across a lot is that one of the members is feeling very criticized. And when I talk to the partner, it is not their intention to be critical or to, they don't feel necessarily hostile. Their impression of their own behavior is that they're being helpful, right? I know something that I want to share with you, and if I just, encourage you in how to drive, you're going to be so grateful, and they're surprised that their efforts to be of assistance are not received warmly. So I'm curious how you talk to them about that.
Well, there are certain exercises that we do. One of them that I really like is the stress-reducing conversation. And we do this in the session. They take their handouts home. Hopefully they'll use it there. And in the stress-reducing conversation, the idea, now this is a little bit different here, but stress from outside the relationship impacts the relationship. So if they will deal with the stress, talk about it, get it out of the way, then they can have, their nice, happy home. And so I would have them do this kind of similar conversation where one person is a speaker, one is the listener, and the listener cannot give any advice, only listens, and they're going to switch roles. But the listener has to listen and ask open-ended questions to be sure that the speaker feels understood. So I would start with the one, the driver, and how the driver feels about being told these things. And you do, the reflective listening. I say, okay, can you reflect back? What I heard you say is that, when I tell you about your driving, it makes you feel blah, blah, blah. And then the listener says, do you feel understood? And if they say yes, then the listener says, would you like advice or problem solving? And if the speaker says nope, then that's it. They switch sides. And then the one who's giving the driving instructions can explain all that, their side of it. So that's one example. Any other questions? Yes.
Here, microphone.
No, the microphone is for the recording.
Sorry.
It's caught behind the chair.
I wonder if a couple has issues and goes to the priest, and the priest is qualified, let's say licensed psychologist, or should they stay there for therapy, or it's better to be referred outside of this?
That's a very good question. We have the issue of dual relationships, in counseling. That is, that I know somebody in more than one way. So if I'm the priest, this is my parishioner, and this is my client. Well, if I have to say something in therapy that would offend in some way, my patient, what happens to that relationship with the priest? So the patient is saying, well, I thought you were my priest. But so it's very tricky and needs to be well thought out. And which relationship is more critical? The priest is more critical, because you can find another therapist, but can you find another confessor in your city, in your town, in your, lots of things to think about. That's a very good question.
And I thought it's not that I thought only this, because I'm a counselor. Sometimes I face the problem that the child comes to me and says certain things, but it comes in an area that I have to refer, because it's multiple interests there. It's a fine, and they have to go to different settings. So I was wondering what's happening in the religious setting.
That's a good point.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
I just wanted to confirm what you said from a personal viewpoint. I happen to be a clergy and a psychiatrist as well, a licensed psychiatrist. So I run through this dual problem a lot, every day, on a daily basis. It's very true, and sometimes it comes in the way of the relationship between me and my parishioner a lot. So I always make that point very clear, that it's better to keep one of the two roles rather than the two together.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Okay. Anything else? One more? Okay, this is one more.
I'm a mental health therapist, and my husband is studying to become a priest right now. And one thing that I know is that for both of us, having done our own work is so important, and especially so for and I know people in most of the psychology professions do supervision, do their own counseling. I'm just curious, like maybe I'm assuming that priests here are people who are pretty self-aware and who have done work if they're at a conference like this. But for clergy or for those people in power how do we encourage them to do their own work? Or because if priests aren't doing their own work, they can't really, suggest to their parishioners that they do that. Parishioners aren't going to take that very seriously. And I'm thinking, especially for men, where there's a lot of resistance to therapy or to getting that kind of outside help. I don't know exactly what my question is, but I'm just curious,
Well, do we have
sort of
any
how to
clergy
address that.
responses to that
Yeah.
question? Because I think that the seminaries seem to be quite savvy, having psychologists on faculty and staff and so forth, but he's got an answer or comment.
Well, I've been a clergyman, a priest for 12 years, and a graduate student in a clinical mental health counseling program for the past 2.5 years. So graduating this December and hopefully getting a license in early next year. What I found in my practice with my community, the Russian Orthodox Church, is a lot of people have a stigma towards counseling. So when I bring it up, they sort of either turn away or sort of shun me somehow. But if I bring it up in a pastoral concept or setting, it seems to flow a little more easily. Then again, having completed an internship last summer, I found that in a clinical setting, my patients, my clients would open up so much, whereas in church, accepting a confession, they wouldn't even scratch below the surface. So I'm seeing two ends of the spectrum. And I myself am open to suggestions as to how I can bridge the gap there or advocate for the counseling profession and also integrate the pastoral concept into the whole psychotherapy profession.
I think this is stimulating a lot of good discussion. I think we're going to have to take it up in the hallways and maybe next OCAMPR 2018. But I want to thank everyone for being here.
Thank
And
you.
you're welcome.